Nawn da i chi. Gyfeillion, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am croeso cynnes. Pan ddaethon ni at yn gilydd yn y Cynhadledd Wanwyn yng Nghaernarfon, mi oedd llawer o'na ni'n dyfalu byddwn ni heddiw yn merw ymgyrch etholiad cyffredinol yn meddwl tybed fydda na gynhadledd flynyddol o gwbl. Ond dyma ni. Yn y diliw yna yn Downing Street, mi nath gwleidyddiaeth eto brofi allu daflu ambell i surprise ata ni yn do. Ond ar ôl y glaw trwm y diwrnod hwnnw, mi gododd enfys etholiadol dros Gymru. Dim glas ar ei chyfil hi. Ie. Ie, y coch yn amlwg yno wrth i Keir Starmer hawlio'r goriad i rif deg Downing Street, ond ar lliwiau Plaid Cymru yn disgleirio yn llachar. Mi oedd o'n ganlyniad hanesyddol i Blaid Cymru, a mae'r diolch am hynny i bob un sydd yma heddiw, bob un weithiodd yn ddiflino ym mhob cwr o'r wlad, a phawb fynodd drwy'r blwch pleidleisio bod yna Gymru decach a mwy uchelgeisiol i'w hennill. Friends, today we come together more hopeful, more united, more determined and resolute than perhaps ever before. This year, the forces at Westminster were intent on silencing Wales's voice, with the number of MPs slashed by a fifth. They threw tropes and tired arguments our way. A vote for Plaid Cymru is a vote to let the Tories in, they said. On election eve, Keir Starmer stepped off the big red bus in Caerfyrddin. A Labour juggernaut sent in to stop us in our tracks. But the people of Wales won't be fooled by tired lines and token visits. Treat Llynos Medi and Anne Davies as political pushovers at your peril. Two formidable women, two outstanding new members of Parliament, and two communities in Caerfyrddin and in Ynys Môn who were lucky to have them as their representatives, fighting their corner, just as Ceredigion Preseli and Dwyfor Meirionnydd are lucky to have Ben and Liz, and showed their appreciation for their hard work and Plaid's vision through mighty majorities. But as much as it's important to remember and recognise those four victories, there lies a deeper truth to our best ever general election results. There were victories and there were hearts and minds won with increased votes in all parts of Wales. Remember that those fortunate enough to represent Wales on the hallowed turf of this stadium do so not alone, but together as a team. They understand that collective spirit, common purpose and teamwork are the foundations of success. Eyes on that line, we cross it together. Every team player with their part to play as we move forward. The new First Minister, incidentally, told us, didn't she, that her new team has an anchor in her last but one predecessor, back now in Welsh Government's B team. It's hard to think of sporting analogies with anchors involved, perhaps tug of war. But remember, they end up going backwards. To all of you who fought for Wales in the name of our party, for the future of all our nation, my heartfelt thanks to you. Diolch o waelod calon. But as the saying goes, you're only as good as your last game. And we come together at this conference confident in our message, but certainly not complacent about the task ahead. We know there's much more work to do, and there's too much at stake to take our eyes off the ball now. Today, in a spirit of hope, and with our strength enhanced, I'll set out who I think we are as a party and how we will move Wales forward, not in the self-indulgent mode of the Tories or the self-serving nature of Labour, but through the lens of what is right for Wales. More than ever, poverty of ambition and paucity of ideas are holding Wales back. We can continue as we are, or we can change course, and in 2026, the question facing the people of Wales is this: accept second best and give Labour a second chance, or take that first step towards becoming the nation we know we can be by electing Plaid Cymru into government to lead Wales. Mae pwy yda ni yn bwysig I fi? Da ni'n blaid sy'n cael yn gyrru bob amser ac yn y deheuad I gael y gorau I Gymru, ond nid mater o edrych mewn ar yn hunain ydy hynny, nac I. Da ni'n rhyngwladol yn gweledigaeth hefyd. Mae yna ddioddefaint enbyd ym mhob cwr o'r byd. Mae'n hanes balch ni fel plaid sy'n arddel heddwch yn golygu yn bod ni'n parhau, sefyll ochr yn ochr efo dinasyddion Wcrain, a phob un sydd yn dioddau trais yn y dwyrain canol. Flwyddyn yn ôl i'r wythnos yma yn dilyn ymosodiadau erchyll Hamas ar Israel. Mi alwon ni'n syth am ryddhau y gwyslon a chyflwyno cadoediad ar unwaith. Mae'n destun torcalon bod yna wyslon yn dal I gael eu cadw yn gaeth heddiw a phoen I hanwyliaid yn tyfu fesul dydd. Ond mae wedi bod ac yn dal I fod yn destun gwarth hefyd sut mae pobl ddi-niwed wedi bod yn destun y dial ac wedi cael eu lladd yn 'u degau o filoedd yn ymosodiadau byddin Israel ar Gaza yn dinistrio cartrefi, ysbytai ag ysgolion. Mi oedd y neges ni yn glir bryd hynny. Mae wedi bod dros flwyddyn gyfan ac mae hi'r un mor glir heddiw wrth i'r trais ymledu I Libanus. We've stood firm on the side of peace, condemning the terrible violence waged on Israeli citizens a year ago and the 12 months of sheer horror in Gaza now spread to Lebanon. So we say yes to making all efforts to forge a lasting peace, to not selling arms to be used on civilians. We say yes to the immediate release of the surviving hostages. Yes to a permanent and immediate ceasefire. Yes to freedom and statehood for the people of Palestine within a two-state solution. And no to violence and suffering, destabilising our entire world. Ydy mae'r byd yn lle mor ansicr, nid yn unig y rhyfeloedd yna, ond y cynnydd mewn anoddefgarwch, trais gwleidyddol yn America, newid yn Sudan, yr argyfwng hinsawdd yn mynd yn fwy o argyfwng o ddydd I ddydd, o dana gwyllt Portugal I lifogydd angeuol dwyrain Ewrop. Ond mae rhywun rhywsyd yn gorfod canfod gobaith yng nghanol yr holl anobaith. A dwi'n llawn gobaith am ddyfodol Cymru. Drychwch ar yr heriau enfawr mae pobl yn I wynebu dros y byd. Enghreiffdio sut mae pobl yn gwrthod cael I trechu brwydro nôl yn erbyn HIV yn Africa, arloesi I drechu afiechydon, y merched sydd yn benderfynol wrth sefyll gorthrwm y Taliban. As the old saying goes, where there is life, there is hope, defiance. Daring, undeterred. Everywhere we look, at home or further afield, we see stories that give us hope, something that's been a dwindling commodity in our recent politics. So conference, as our centenary approaches as a party, and with the 2026 election on the horizon, I want our small nation to embrace that hope of what we can be, to face the challenges, to harness the big ideas, let the compassion, dedication and aspiration of others, wherever they may be, guide us towards a better Wales which can take its place among the nations of the world. Da ni'n blaid eangfrydig, un sy'n ei chenedlaetholdeb sifig wedi wreiddio mewn goddefgarwch, un sy'n am weld I gwlad yn etifeddu y normalrwydd o annibyniaeth, sydd wedi bod yn daith di-droi nôl I gymaint o genhedloedd dros y degawdau diwetha. Plaid sydd yn estyn llaw, nid cau y drws. Plaid sy'n codi pontydd, nid codi bwganodd. A plaid fydd yn gweithio bob dydd I wrthsefyll y grymoedd hynny sy'n bygwth undod cymdeithas efo'i celwydd a'i casineb. Friends, I have no doubt that the tide of Welsh politics is turning. And more people are turning towards our ideas, our vision. In fact, having given up on their own policies, we're quite used to seeing other parties turn to ours. The Tories want to electrify the North Wales railway line. Now, where on earth have they been? They've just had 14 years in power to do something. In fact, railways were first electrified in the UK in the late 19th century. Labour and the Conservatives had a century in power between them without electrifying a single mile of track in Wales. The Tories also now want HS2 consequentials to come to Wales, despite saying absolutely not when they were holding the levers of power and could actually do something about it. Some in Labour want to devolve the Crown Estate. It's great to have their support now. But of course, the Starmer-Stevens axis just won't allow it. The same for devolving the justice system. In 2017, Carwyn Jones promised to consign the Barnett formula to the history books. It couldn't be defended, he said, as Plaid Cymru had long argued. Yet in a recent letter to me, the current First Minister said, it's all good. Happy as we are, she'll just push for a fair way of implementing something, a fair approach to the application of the Barnett formula, a fair way of implementing something that is fundamentally unfair. You cannot do it. It's quite convenient for them to keep Barnett now. In fact, it's very convenient to face two different ways when in opposition and in government. But let's see through that and see the governing Labour Party for what they are. It's quite clearly party first, country second. At no point has this been more evident than over the past 6 months, as Labour in Wales, displaying all the dysfunction of the Truss and Johnson years, tried to lecture the public on political probity, but the people weren't buying it. They said that somehow a £200,000 donation from a convicted polluter to the campaign of the man who'd ultimately lead our government was defendable. That it wasn't a story of interest beyond the bubble, that somehow an internal Labour review about donations was enough to make the issue go away. Where is that review, by the way? There was no listening exercise with the public then, was there? No contrition, no apology, no sense of regret that Labour infighting was paralysing the work of government. They could lecture everyone else about right and wrong, but couldn't seem to see the difference themselves. Now, whether they were unable or unwilling to do so is a matter of opinion, but what's not in doubt is that this was the very definition of a party in a comfort zone, feeling almost an inevitability that they are the party of government, a sense of doing what you want, when you want, no matter the consequences. But friends, Labour isn't inevitable. For a large part, Labour in Wales have been a pretty open book, underwhelming, but at least understood, electorally resolute, if not radical. But by now, it's a closed shop, strong-arming dissenting voices, defined by stagnation and self-insulating from the ideas of others. They've come to display the traits of a rugby player or a footballer returning to pre-season training on the tail end of their careers. Not really wanting to be there, but unable to let it go. Not sure what their contribution is, but wanting influence in the dressing room still. Knowing the game is up, but not quite able to admit it. But the truth is this: Wales cannot afford another 25 years of Labour. And of course, Labour's letting down its own traditional supporters, so many of whom are already embracing Plaid Cymru's vision. Labour's failing them, failing Wales, and failing to understand what it takes to turn things around. Well, we can win by demonstrating that we're better than this. We're bolder and not the bystanders that this government have become. Be in no doubt, we can win at the ballot box. And that must be our goal. And this isn't about winning for us, it's about winning for Wales. Now, the tides may be turning, as I say, but the currents of ongoing austerity are leading us to ever more perilous political waters, ever diminishing the reservoirs of finances and our tolerance to the impact of cuts. Change, they proclaimed, loudly and proudly, on letter and leaflet, door knock and debate. After 14 years, we were asked to imagine a new beginning, a future not of more for the few, but of valuing community and the pursuit of equality. We could move forward as the page turned on the Tories' torrid term of office. But how soon the mask slipped. It's been less about turning the page and more about turning the screw. Pensioners, deprived of their winter fuel payments, and all the while Keir Starmer was being lavished by your lords. Brings a whole new meaning to cutting your cloth accordingly. And in the Senedd, we were told not to question the new First Minister about Sir Keir. We should write to our own MPs, said the First Minister, if we wanted to raise the winter fuel payment or anything else with her superior. A Labour government, defending the indefensible. No red faces, and certainly no clear red water. And today, as we come here, the Council of the Nations and Regions is meeting in Edinburgh with one noticeable absentee. Now, Liz Truss may have been outlasted by a lettuce, but even she pales in comparison to Sue Gray, who appears to have quit her job before even starting it properly. And what is an envoy to the nations and regions anyway? Not so clear, Starmer, handing out a P45 before even writing the job description. But friends, let me promise you this. There is no grey area when it comes to where we stand on doing what's best for Wales. If others won't pursue radical action, we will, as we always have. The possibility to reimagine Wales, to rejuvenate people's faith in politics and reaffirm our values is the great prize awaiting us. At the dawn of devolution, our hearts beat faster. In 1999, we were riding a wave of optimism and a shared conviction that the Assembly, as it was then, would act as a cradle of democracy, bringing better decisions and superior outcomes. And it did give Wales a voice at long last. We began to see the potential in ourselves, and decisions have been taken that have genuinely improved people's lives in Wales. But in 2026, we have to do even more to set hearts racing, inspired by a fit-for-purpose Senedd and that real opportunity for change, a gear change after 25 years of Labour-led governments. This is the time to think afresh about how we make Wales work. Make it work for the steelworker, losing a living and longing for hope. Make it work for the patient in pain, the carer doing it for free, and the child who should never have to pay the price of poverty. Fairness and ambition, as you know, that's the language of my politics. And it's a politics with a real sense of purpose. That's a hallmark of Plaid Cymru. A sense of purpose in that we know we exist to serve all of Wales, to fight for that fairness every single day and to persuade others of the potential our nation holds. Energy, drive, determination, they're words that seem to have gone missing from Labour's lexicon in Wales. But we are restless and impatient to see a better Wales realised. Now, whilst this government lurches from one sticking plaster solution to the next, we look at the big picture and that need to change for the long term, working across all of government to achieve it. We know that deprivation is hugely consequential for health, so our anger at Labour dropping child poverty targets when the NHS needs all the help it can get is no surprise. We know the link between inadequate housing and poor education attainment. So no, Labour missing its affordable homes target is simply not good enough. We know that small businesses are critical in creating wealth and employment in our community. So it's little wonder that we're frustrated when businesses see their support being sidelined rather than having a government on their side. Plaid Cymru in government will break the cycle of short-term thinking which short-changes Wales. Now, unlike Lyned Morgan, I will acknowledge that some things are broken. But more importantly, I'll be determined that nothing is beyond repair. And our Plaid Cymru government won't consider issues in isolation. Silo working helps no one when one decision so often affects another. One of the bedrocks of a healthy economy is a well Wales. It's people active in body and mind. Similarly, as the Lancet put it recently, education is a neglected social determinant of health. But to end the scourge of poverty, we must reconsider its very roots and ask ourselves, why do we want the economy to grow and for whom? And why should fiscal rules cost so much to those who can least afford it? The right, whatever their latest incarnation, have such simple answers, don't they? For Andrew R.T. Davis, it's encouraging his followers to give up on Wales entirely. For whoever the next UK leader of the opposition may be, it'll be a convenient amnesia, no doubt, about the last 14 years of chaos and cuts. For Nigel Farage, well, it's cozying up to the common man whilst raking in a fortune from peddling his prejudice on GB News. And conference, reform are no friends of Wales. Now, given half a chance, they'd set our country back decades. They dismiss others as snowflakes, but it's them who melt under the slightest heat of scrutiny. They claim to be on the side of working people, whilst their tax and spend plans would make Liz Truss blush. In fact, Nigel Farage said he admired Liz Truss, admired the woman who cost you so dearly in higher mortgages and higher rents. And for a man so seemingly desperate to become an MP that he stood no fewer than 8 times, he seems more interested in spending time in Palm Beach than Clacton Beach. But whoever they are, reactionary politicians plying their trade with false narratives and false hope, risk breaking the already fragile bond of community, prioritising self-interest over mutual aid, unleashing the worst excesses of intolerance and of fear. I say again, they're no friends of Wales, and they have no plan for Wales. Now, I understand people wanting to protest against the revolving doors of Conservative and Labour UK leadership. It frustrates me every single day. And after 25 years of Labour leadership here, I know why people feel left behind. But through Plaid Cymru, you can channel that frustration into ushering in actual change, a new leadership, a new kind of government. I know we're under no illusion about the size of the task ahead. Labour's legacy is one I'd rather we didn't have to inherit. After 25 years, Wales's economy is misfiring, its children deprived of the best schools, patients waiting longer for treatment, public services run to the ground. We can't promise to address all those issues overnight, but we can make a start. And critically, we can be a better government than the one that came before us. Eluned Morgan embarked on a listening exercise, admitting that her predecessors hadn't been listening. It's been 25 years. Now, I try to listen every single day, but more importantly, as well as listening, we'll deliver too, making up for lost time as the current incumbents lost their way. We can and will put a programme for government in place that can have both an immediate impact and bring in real change for the long term. Now, the pressure on the NHS under Labour continues to increase. More and more people are going in through the front door of primary and secondary care, too few going out of the back door quickly enough. This government is still not grasping the need to resolve the issue of social care, as we have long called for. But this year, as those waiting lists grew, Labour, for some inexplicable reason, cut the amount it spends on preventative health policies. Now, friends, this is short-term thinking with long-term pain guaranteed. It feeds the problem as opposed to solving it, putting further pressures on frontline staff, filling our hospitals with ever sicker patients. Now, Plaid Cymru will reverse that thinking. It's something I am determined to do, ensuring the NHS is fit for its centenary celebrations and beyond. As the NHS Confederation have rightly said, shifting the focus from public health initiatives delivered through the NHS and local authorities to addressing the wider determinants of health would reduce demand on the health system, creating capacity. For too long, Labour's priority has been managing people's pain. But I want to keep people healthy, and I can announce that in the first 100 days of a Plaid Cymru government, we will bring forward a new budget based on the principles of a healthier, wealthier Wales, with a promise that spending on preventative health measures will increase every single year. So it's no more sticking plaster, no more blaming the individual, no more passing the buck. This is grown-up government taking responsibility, empowering people and protecting the NHS. And we have an enormous task ahead of us on improving the NHS estates. We'll go further than the last 8 Labour health ministers together, clearing the emergency maintenance backlogs over the duration of the next Senedd term. Only this week, a critical incident was declared at the Princess of Wales Hospital in Bridgend because of serious damage to its roof. We have to have an NHS estate fit for purpose. We'll also introduce a target-focused cancer contract for every patient and reform the governance of the NHS, bringing standards back where they should be and waiting lists down. And with a new Minister for Public Health, we'll put the N back in the NHS, ensuring a truly national mission of creating healthier lives, which in turn will deliver substantial savings. Our treasured National Health Service, born on Labour's watch, given a rebirth by the Plaid Cymru government, I will lead. Ond nid dim ond y maes iechyd mae'r llywodraeth Lafur yn gwneud tro gwael efo pobl Cymru. Unwaith eto, y llynedd, mi oedden ni ar waelod bob tabl Prydeinig o ran safona addysg, mewn mathemateg, mewn darllen ac mewn gwyddoniaeth. Am lawer rhy hir, mae gweinidogion addysg Llafur, un ar ôl y llall, wedi bodloni ar berfformiadau addysg di-fflach, canlyniadau sy'n rhoi Cymru yn y penawdau am y rhesymau cwbl anghywir, ac yn gwneud anghyfiawnder efo'n rhieni, efo'n athrawon, ond yn bennaf oll, wrth gwrs, yn pobl ifanc. Fis Tachwedd y llynedd, ni gafodd ymchwil i gyhoeddi gan undeb athrawon yr NES UWT, oedd yn ddigon i godi ofn ar unrhyw un sy'n a otsh ganddyn nhw am ddyfodol yn ysgolion ni. Mi nododd bron i 3 chwarter, 3 o bob 4 athro nath ymateb i arolwg, bod nhw'n ystyried o ddifri gadael y proffesiwn o fewn y 12 mis nesaf. Rwan, mae hyn yn deud gymaint nid yn unig am foral heddiw, ond hefyd am fethiant y llywodraeth dros chwarter canrif i sicrhau fod y byd addysg yn teimlo'n faes deniadol i weithio ynddo fo. Ac nid yn unig hynny yn faes i'r adnoddau a'r arweinyddiaeth sydd ei angen i alluogi addysgwyr i ganolbwyntio ar feithrin rhagoriaeth a chefnogi disgyblion i gyrraedd i llawn potensial. Y reality ydy hyn, adeiladau sydd heb fod yn addos i bwrpas ers degawdau, anghydfod hir dros gyflogau, arolygon yn dangos anhapusrwydd staff a diffyg atebolrwydd difrifol gan y Llywodraeth Lafur sy'n mynd i beio'r ceidwadwyr a Covid am eu methiannau nhw. Rwan fel mab i 2 riant fi yn athrawon a thad i 3 o blant, mae hyn yn nghythryddo i, a dwi'n gwybod i fod o yn eich cythryddo chi hefyd. Yn pryn am rieni, yn nain a taid, mam gi a thad ci, modryb ac ewythr, da ni gyd eisiau'r gorau ar gyfer y genhedlaeth nesaf. Conference, we need to go back to basics in education. In Northern Ireland, they saw this was needed to allow every pupil to reach their potential. As far back as 13 years ago, the Northern Ireland government's Count, Read, Succeed strategy had a clear focus, underpinned by a number of key pillars: raising school standards for all, closing the performance gap, increasing access and equity, developing the education workforce, improving the learning environment and transforming education management. Its stated mission was to ensure that the personal characteristics or the backgrounds of a pupil didn't adversely impact on her or his achievement. Embedded within the strategy were targets and milestones. Imagine that, an alien concept when it comes to current Welsh Government thinking. So what came of this plan, you ask? Well, pupils in Northern Ireland were ranked 5th in the world for reading in the latest Progress in International Reading Literacy study. Now, taking inspiration from their approach, we will ensure that children are taught to read in a way that works, using best practice in a way Welsh Government seems intent on ignoring. And by looking at the bigger picture, by tackling poverty and improving public health, we'll be determined to deal with the chronic inequalities holding pupils and schools back from reaching their potential. Da ni fel Plaid yn gwybod pa mor ffurfiannol ydy'r blynyddoedd cynnar o ran datblygiad plentyn. Dyna pam gnathon ni hi yn flaenoriaeth i argyhoeddi'r Llywodraeth Lafur y dylai bob plentyn ym mhob ysgol gynradd yng Nghymru dderbyn cinio am ddim. Ma'n wrtha tan hynny wedi gwrthwynebu'n polisi ni dro ar ôl tro. Mae 20 miliwn o bryda wedi cael ei gweini ers dechrau'r cynllun 2 flynedd yn ôl. Dim mwy o blant yn methu canolbwyntio yn y dosbarth am fod eu boliau nhw yn wag. Mae'n rhywbeth dyla ni fod yn falch ohono fo. Mae'n rhywbeth y dyla ni ac y gallwn ni fod yn falch iawn ohono fo, a dyna ydy gwerth Plaid Cymru mewn gwrthblaid. Dychmygwch be allwn ni wneud a'i gyflawni mewn llywodraeth. Ac wrth gwrs mae eisiau dechrau cefnogi plant a'i teuluoedd o'r blynyddoedd fenga. Mae'r National Childbirth Trust yn amcangyfri bod rhieni rwan yn talu ar gyfer taledd dros 7,000 o bunna y flwyddyn am lefydd mewn meithrinfa, hynny'n rhan amser. Mae hynny'n gyfran fawr iawn o gyllideb teulu, a dyna pam yn bod ni mor benderfynol bod y gwaith da ddechreuon ni drwy'r cytundeb cydweithio, efo'r bwriad o gyflwyno cynnig gofal plant gwirioneddol drawsnewidiol ddim yn mynd heb I gwblhau. Whatever the priority area, again, Plaid Cymru pledges not to view them in isolation. Poor housing, ill health, malnutrition, obesity, child poverty, they're all interlinked determinants of future wealth, well-being and happiness, and all issues which I'm impatient to tackle head on. So on housing, the Plaid Cymru government would enshrine in law a right to an adequate home. Tens of thousands of people are trapped on housing waiting lists, whilst thousands more are forced to face the dangers of unsafe cladding, damp moulds or poor insulation. And with nearly 1,000 under-16s currently living in hotels or B&Bs as temporary accommodation, remember that just one is too many. Now, we will launch an ambitious retrofitting programme so that energy efficiency is at the heart of our housing policy and embed a new approach to building affordable homes that makes economic and environmental sense. So all these issues, housing, education, health, form part of the delicate fabric of society, so much of it unravelled by years of Tory austerity and now being unpicked again by Labour. From their stubborn refusal to scrap the two-child benefit cap to cutting that winter fuel allowance. It's already clear that young and old are being ill-served by Starmer's new administration. That's why one of the first acts of a Plaid Cymru government would be to reinstate meaningful targets for reducing child poverty, which remains a stubborn scourge on Welsh society. During a Senedd committee meeting just a few weeks ago, the former First Minister, Mark Drakeford, the man now in charge of Wales's finances, shared the harrowing story of a young woman in his Cardiff West constituency. She told him she hadn't eaten for 3 days after paying her council tax bill because of the burden it placed on her budget. But just like they dropped poverty targets, dropped a law to ensure gender parity in the next Senedd, the Labour Welsh Government have delayed the revaluation of the current unfair and regressive council tax regime until 2028. You know, there was a time when we knew what Labour were for, what they wanted to do, and all we know now is what they don't want to do. Our vision will be clear. You'll see it in our ambitions for the economy, backing enterprise, supporting small businesses, creating a new prosperity, protecting workers' rights, and building the green economy of the future. If there's one area where the confluence of Welsh Labour policy and Westminster Tory policy have damaged our nation in recent years, it is the economy, from the failure to give Wales its fair share of HS2 consequentials to the snail-paced response to the Tata Steel crisis, from the continued injustice of the Barnett formula to the prevailing wage gap between Welsh workers and their UK counterparts. With our economic weather remaining at the mercy of Westminster winds, one thing has always been missing, I think. Whilst we were busy building the world, we forgot to build Wales. Our extractive economy, now exhausted and depleted, has left a chasm not only of opportunity, but of optimism too. But I do remain optimistic. I have no doubt we can rebuild. Missed opportunities to continue primary steel making in Wales angers us today. Deeply, communities have been let down by government inaction. But somehow that anger now must fuel us as we forge a different path, one that may not be able to repeat, but most definitely has to rhyme with the golden age of Welsh industry, an age of high-skilled, well-paid jobs, and where professions nurtured pride. So I hope you'll join me in this hall tomorrow to hear Plaid Cymru plans to ignite the engine of the Welsh economy. Just to give you a flavour, when I was economy spokesman, I championed reviving a development agency, a new WGA fit for the 21st century. And it's an idea I still stand by today, helping create a new dynamism in economic development, working with business, boosting exports, generating investment and linking Wales to the world. We have real ambition in Plaid Cymru for the prosperous country we can be. We're the only party that absolutely rejects the notion that Wales is somehow inferior and incapable of taking its place among the independent economies of the world. We can and we will. Friends, we know that there are better days ahead, that our spirits will not be dampened, nor our ambitions deterred by the Tory and Labour naysayers. We know that real change will only come with a change of Welsh government and a change of priorities that puts allegiance to Wales before allegiance to party bosses at Westminster. We know, don't we, our principles. We know our purpose. And we know the prize. A healthier, wealthier Wales that works for everyone who calls our nation home. The NHS under new leadership. Schools given a new direction. A government which understands rural and urban challenges alike. New vigour in creating jobs and economic opportunity, a greener Wales, new homes being built, new targets to bring down poverty, a new Wales with a new team at the helm. Let's go and win it together. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi.